Welcome to the NFL MVP Momentum Podcast. I'm Sam Holcroft alongside Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. Today, we're going to do our top 10 pick preview for this upcoming NFL draft. And as you can see on the screen right here, we got 19 days and then some change until the draft. So we're going to go through every single pick, kind of see exactly what position these teams are probably going to be going for, and maybe even name drop a few players that we could see them taking. So, PT, we're going to start off with number 1, the Carolina Panthers. Oh, wait. They traded this pick in that silly pick for Bryce Young last year. So the Chicago Bears have their first overall pick. Well, they already have Justin Fields, right? Oh, wait. Justin Fields is gone. So then we know what they're going to be drafting here, or who they're going to be drafting, and that's Joe Alt, right? Number 1?
I think it's Neighbors.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one too, to pair up with DJ and Keenan Allen. Okay, we got to stop messing around here, bro. Caleb Williams going number 1. It's pretty much, if you could bet your $1 million to make him 1.1 million, this is the one to bet on. He's probably the undisputed number 1 pick, not only among the quarterbacks, but just all players. They just gave away Justin Fields. Is there any chance that anyone's going to be drafted instead of Caleb Williams here?
Nah, I don't think so, honestly. I mean, when there's a prospect like Caleb Williams, and I think you and me can debate whether Caleb Williams is really the guy or not, that's going to take them to the playoffs and be a franchise quarterback. I just don't think you can pass up the kind of guy that he is. I mean, I know I said before that if here's the hypothetical, right? If you pass on Caleb Williams and you take another guy, I don't know, Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and Caleb Williams turns out to be really good, I don't think you can live that down. I mean, especially as a GM, as a head coach, Eberflus, and I don't think you can live that down. Whereas if you take Caleb Williams here, and he ends up not being as good as you think, but he still ends up being a pretty good starter, I don't think anyone's going to blame you for that, So I think you kind of have to go with Caleb Williams here. He has the stats. He has the cachet, or the clout, as the kids call it. And so I think you kind of have to take him here, and you don't think twice about it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty cut and clear. It's going to be Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. So then if we move to pick number 2, we have the Washington Commanders, who just traded away Sam Howell. So it's pretty clear that they're going with a quarterback, right?
Yeah, I think it's clear they're going quarterback here, obviously, but I think the part that gets people in draft analysis is who are they going to go? Are they going to go Jaden Daniels or Drake May? And I think you kind of have to look at the new head coach Dan Quinn and kind of what he has succeeded with lately. And I know he's been a defensive coordinator for a few years now with the Cowboys, but when he was a head coach, who did he succeed with? It was Matt Ryan. And I know they had the Super Bowl collapse. I'm a Falcons fan. You don't have to remind me. I understand. But when they had that great season they had as him as a head coach, it was a pocket passing guy who didn't really have to do much, in between the lines. He just had to deliver the ball and open spaces. And to me, that's Drake May. And I think, I think a lot of people are getting kind of what you would call, what do you call it? Draft fatigue, prospect fatigue with Drake May. I think Drake May is a good player. I think sometimes if you look at his tape, he can miss kind of the throws that you want him to make on a gamely basis, but I think it's very coachable. And I think he has all the intangibles as you want. I mean, he's almost 6'4". He's taller than Jaden Daniels, and he's not the athlete that Jaden Daniels is. But in this system, I don't think you necessarily need him to be that kind of guy. And especially when we look at Drake May's tape, he didn't have, Malik Neighbors. He didn't have Brian Thomas Jr. He didn't have the LSU team to work with. So I think you take Drake May here. Now, I will say that I wouldn't hate it if they took Jaden Daniels. I think it would make sense as far as the current, I guess I don't want to say environment, but kind of how the NFL is going lately, with kind of more dual threat quarterbacks. But I just think I have a lot more hope that Drake May is going to be a solid quarterback versus Jane Daniels being possibly a bust. So I would take Drake May here.
So at the beginning of the year, I thought Drake May was, Caleb Williams undisputed number one, Drake May undisputed number two. But as the season kind of went along, I started kind of thinking like maybe Drake May isn't, as good as I'm thinking he is. Now, he is a pro style quarterback, so that helps, obviously. I mean, with a very similar system, Sam Howell got drafted. Now, he got drafted in the 5th round by the same Washington team. But, I mean, they've already had a North Carolina quarterback, in with the same system as Howell. But just looking at his stats compared to Jaden Daniels, where Jaden Daniels has played against better competition and had more success, more touchdowns, less interceptions, a higher completion percentage, and if we look at their per game totals, like Drake May is almost averaging 2 touchdowns to an interception, where Jaden Daniels with the ratio is 11 touchdowns, or sorry, 10, no, that's right, 11 touchdowns to an interception. So, but this is where, college can be deceiving. How good is Jaden Daniels really when he has Malik Neighbors, who is, a top 2 wide receiver in this draft, and Brian Thomas Jr. is probably easily number 4 in this draft as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, it's really funny to bring this up but with Joe Burrow, with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, it's like, how good is he really once you take these guys away? And, he had a pretty good rookie year. He started off pretty slow, but then he got hurt. And then he gets Jamar. And what do? They go to the Super Bowl. And, like, even though he did end up getting his teammate back, but we found out that, Joe Burrow is a real deal. It wasn't just because he had 2 really good receivers to throw to. I mean, look at Justin Fields. Like, Jane Daniels could be just like Justin Fields. Justin Fields had Chris Olave. He had Garrett Wilson, a young Jackson Smith and Jigba. And what did he do when he got to the Bears? He never even threw for 2,500 yards.
Exactly.
So what could Jaden Daniels be? Is he going to be Joe Burrow, or is he going to be Justin Fields? But I do think that if we are comparing solely based on the senior year and the momentum that they are currently on, I would take Jaden Daniels. But if you want to go with Drake May, just for the same reasons that you said with Dan Quinn, I completely understand. And like, I'm not going to get mad that Drake May goes second, but I just think that Jaden Daniels is the better prospect to go here. Fit wise, probably not, but just better prospect.
Yeah, and I can see that, and I wouldn't be surprised either if Jane Daniels went here. This isn't a mock draft, so we don't necessarily have to pencil these guys in, but just for the sake of the exercise, let's say that, I think we talked about this off air, but if we have a tiebreaker here, we disagree. The next one, if I choose this one, the next one will go to you. So let's do Drake May here to Washington, and then let's talk about New England. I think New England, I think we've talked about this a few times, you and me, but I know they really want a quarterback, and I get it. I do. But I just feel like putting him in this kind of position is just too detrimental to his development, especially if you want him to start day one. And I'm not saying in New England he has to start day one. Jacoby Brissett can start, but they're just going to be so bad because they haven't made any moves for, a real wide receiver. I think T. Higgins is still possible, but they don't really have much of an O-line. They don't have much of a defense. So even if he plays one of the better seasons that you can ask for, better than CJ Stroud or at CJ Stroud's level, Are they going to be better than the Texans year one? Probably not. So I hate putting Jaden Daniels in this kind of position, but I feel like if they really like him, you kind of have to go there. So, you know, um, they probably do it, but what I would do is I would probably go Marvin Harrison Jr. because here's the thing, is that I think that no matter what happens, you're not going to be very good this year. Even if you draft Jane Daniels or Marvin Harrison or whoever, you're not going to be very good, right? So you know that you have a chance to draft a quarterback next year. Kind of like what the Bears did last year. You know that you're not going to be very good this year. I mean, they were okay. They had um the 9th or 10th or 11th pick or something like that. They were good, but they were still a bottom 10 team as far as record goes. So you're not going to be very good. So you don't draft a quarterback this draft, and maybe this decision has them trade down on draft day to the Vikings. That would be interesting. Um, but I just feel like they should try to get a piece here, maybe draft down. So me personally, and I don't know how exactly you want to pencil this in, but I would go Marvin Harrison Jr. here, or I would trade down. I wouldn't draft a quarterback, but I think predictive wise, I think they're going to take Jaden, but I don't like it for him as developmentally. I don't like it.
See, now if the draft goes the way that they want it, or the way that we have it going, and the New England Patriots are there, I could see them maybe even trading down a pick
Yeah.
and trying to get some sort of assets, because they know that they could get either Marvin Harrison or Jaden Daniels, and I think they're okay with either.
Yeah.
So obviously they don't have super stellar receivers. They got Juju Smith, and then they got a bunch of guys who could be number 3s on any other team, maybe even some 4s.
Yeah.
Like they got Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas. Those are the only 2 that I can think of. Hunter Henry's somewhat
And
notable.
even Juju Smith is probably like a mid too.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not what he was back when he was with the Steelers, or heck, even with the Chiefs 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So if they go with Marvin Harrison here, I wouldn't mind it. But the only thing that bothers me, and as I'm showing here, I'm showing the acquisitions from free agency. They got Jacoby Brissett back, but only for a year and $8 million. So that doesn't say that he's necessarily going to be the starter. But I do like the idea of drafting Jaden Daniels, sitting the first half of the season, and then once they know that they're going to have another top 10 pick, start Jaden Daniels for the rest of the season so he can learn under Jacoby, because Jacoby's proven ever since he left the Patriots in 2018, 2019, whenever that was, that he could be a starting quarterback in the
Yeah.
NFL. Even with the Browns leading up until Deshaun Watson took over last year or 2 years ago, he was doing fairly well. So I just think that this is a good opportunity for Jacoby to mentor Jaden, and for the Patriots to kind of get something going with him. It sucks because he's, like you said, he's not going to have a lot of good guys to throw to, but I would prefer to see Jaden Daniels, because what if you're bad next year and next year's quarterback class is not good? Then you have to you're stuck in either going out and signing another Jacoby Brissett for $8 million to put a Band-Aid on the position, or you can draft your guy that is going to be your guy for at least the next 3 years.
Yeah. That's fair. So we have them probably taking Jaden. You good?
Sorry, you cut out there.
I was saying that we pretty much have them taking Jaden based on the possible outcomes of it failing or succeeding, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. Because we don't know exactly what next class is looking like yet.
Right. But now going on to the Cardinals, this one I think is kind of obvious with how we've kind of had this going now. Hollywood Brown is gone. Rondale Moore is gone. I guess is it Trent McBride whoever that tight end is in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
That I think this is Marvin Harrison Jr. here, right?
I think that they're gonna go Malik Neighbors.
Really?
He's my number one on my draft board. I think that they see a guy, and this is kind of how the draft evaluation goes. And I understand. I get it. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the number one receiver. But I just feel like for some reason they're gonna like Malik Neighbors more because he's kind of the guy that is gonna be that Tyreek Hill, that Jamar Chase, who's gonna be that number one, who yeah, he might not have, the athletic profile that Marvin Harrison Jr. has, but he's got the mentality and kind of the build that you expect from a number one. And I like Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has a very high floor. At his worst, he's gonna be maybe a Mike Evans, and Mike Evans is a really good player. Um, but I don't know if he's ever gonna be a Julio Jones. I don't know if he's ever gonna be a, Terrell Owens or Chad Ochocinco. I don't know if he's ever gonna be that kind of guy. But I see Malik Neighbors as having a lower floor, yes, in his worst seasons, but in his best seasons, he's gonna be an offensive player of the year candidate because of his speed. He's a track guy, and I think that's kind of the guy they need to take the top off of defenses. So I actually have them taking Neighbors here, but if you have them taking Marvin, that's cool because you have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, so I really do think that they're going to go Marvin Harrison here. If we're looking at the per game stats, um, there's about a 20 yards difference, a 1.2 reception difference. Marvin Harrison does get the edge on touchdowns because he didn't
Point
play in
one.
their bowl game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same with the average.
Hmm.
But something very interesting. So we know how good CJ Stroud was this last year, and he was pretty good in college. I mean, he was the number 2 overall pick last year.
Hmm.
How good would you say Kyle McCord is?
It's funny because I was just looking that up. I would say he's not very good.
No, he's not. And yet Marvin Harrison had very comparable stats with CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord. A little bit less yards, 10 less receptions, yet the same amount of touchdowns. So, with that being said, I think Marvin Harrison is your guy. I also think that, bigger receivers are a lot, I don't know, I want to say like wanted, but like it's a lot nicer to have. Now, if Malik
Hmm.
Neighbors and Harrison Smith or Harrison Jr. Were like a 50-50, you could go either way, then you're going to go with the size.
Yeah.
But I just think that the stats are very comparable. Marvin Harrison's stats with Kyle McCord and CJ are very comparable. And Marvin Harrison has the size. I think everything's pointing towards Marvin Harrison. But if they do end up going, or sorry, if the Patriots end up going with Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors falls right into their lap, and I think they're cool with that.
So, yeah, I agree with everything you said. I will say two things because I didn't really, I mean, I like Neighbors a lot, but I didn't really give Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot of credit. One thing I really like about him, one, his route tree is really good. You can tell that he comes from a family of football players, especially obviously his dad, and he studied his whole life on kind of route trees, how to get the leverage on corners. Um, and then on top of that, yeah, he's a lot bigger. He's almost 6'4". And so you would almost prefer that, like you said, you would prefer that size over the speed because it's easier for your quarterback to work with a guy that's bigger that also has speed versus a guy that's just fast that you're going to have to kind of drop it into him. So yeah, I think it makes it easier on Kyler Murray and like we said about Caleb, if you go MHJ at 4 here and he turns out to be pretty good, but maybe not as good as Malik Neighbors, let's just say that hypothetically. no one's going to blame you for taking that pick. That was the pick that you should have taken. But if you take Neighbors and then Marvin Harrison Jr. is a Hall of Famer and Neighbors is just kind of like, not a bad player, but if he's like Amon St. Brown, you're going to be like, dude, what were you thinking? So, yeah, I'll agree with you here. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go to the Cardinals or whoever drafts up to take that pick. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals drafted out of this, but in this exercise, we're not moving around at all here. We're not doing a mock draft here, so let's have Marvin Harrison Jr. go forth.
Yeah. And then just one last little thing that I want to add is when I was just talking about Jaden Daniels, is like, did Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors make Jaden Daniels look good? Or did Jaden Daniels make Malik Neighbors look good and Brian Thomas? So it's very like kind of like conflicting things, and it's like, so I think that, you know, the proven success with two different quarterbacks, two totally different skill levels too, is really what pushes Marvin over. So
yeah, I agree.
All right, so now number 5, kind of back to like, this is probably the first one where we're kind of like, what are they going to do? And this is the Los Angeles Chargers. So what are they going to do?
So, Sam, can you just say what your theory is? Not necessarily your theory, but I just want you to kind of go through the exercise of what you were thinking the other day. You told me off air, because if it's wrong, no one's expecting it to be right. But if it's right, you might be a genius. So, can you just go through that process real quick?
So, the Los Angeles Chargers trade away Keenan Allen for a pick. Okay. They released Mike Williams. Okay. They still have Quentin Johnston. I think they still got Josh Palmer. Let's look at their free agency real fast. What did the Los Angeles Chargers get on offense? They re-signed Hayden Hurst.
Good player.
Cool.
Sort of.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think
player.
Gerald Everett's gone. I think Parnham's gone.
Yeah.
They got Will Dissly. Okay.
Cool little player. 2 tight ends.
So it's safe to say that this team is probably embracing a tank, which is unfortunate.
New coach. Don't forget that.
New coach with John Harbaugh. I'll bring that name up here in a second.
Yep.
They still got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa on defense that they could trade away for some picks if they want to go into a complete rebuild. Maybe build around one of them. But PT, how many first-round picks do you think you could get for Justin Herbert right now?
So this is kind of the debate. I don't know if we had a debate on it necessarily, but I'll say that if you have a quarterback, and let me just make sure that my homework is correct here real quick. Okay, so he is a 6'6", 26-year-old quarterback who has proven to have talent. So in my opinion, you could get from the right team, Vikings, you could get probably at least 3 firsts and some more stuff. And I think that is a little bit too much to turn down if you're the Chargers.
So let's say they do that to the Vikings.
Okay.
Vikings who have 2 first-round picks in this very draft.
Correct.
So the Chargers could have 3 total picks in the first 23 picks, might I add. So then who do they go with at number 5? How about they go with a guy that was the first quarterback that Jim Harbaugh recruited at Michigan and had him his entire career at Michigan and is now in the draft. What if they go JJ McCarthy at 5? He's very moldable, okay? And now this is a stretch. I don't think that this is what they should do, but I think that's what they could do.
Yeah.
Now, Now, what can they do with picks number 11 and 23? Rome Odunze could be at 11.
Could be.
Brian Thomas Jr. could be at 24, but you don't need to get both. You get an offensive lineman. You can get help.
Joe Alt or
That's the important.
Fashanu or Fuaga could be there at 11 easy.
Exactly. And then there's this receiver class is so deep that they could get the fourth or fifth best receiver. Brian Thomas could still be available at 23.
Easy. Yeah.
So, and if not him, Xavier Worthy or
second favorite corner.
They could go defense too. They don't have to get another receiver. I mean, they did draft a receiver last year in Quentin Johnston. But it's wild. It's insane.
The possibilities are endless for the Chargers.
But a lot of scouts are starting to like McCarthy. And it was crazy. It went from McCarthy's the sixth best quarterback in this draft to leading up to the combine. It's like he could be fourth. And now he could be a top 10 pick.
It's like it puts the Vikings in position where, as a quarterback needing team, we probably have to draft up to get this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you could settle for Bo Nix and Michael Penix and maybe have to reach at 11.
Yeah.
When you would realistically rather probably take one of those guys at 23.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. If you don't get a quarterback and you're going with a rookie quarterback, JJ, if he doesn't like him at the end of this year, deuces, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you get Justin Herbert, that is ensuring that you can still be competing for the division, even though you lost a decent amount of pieces this offseason, but still have a chance to get a few more pieces in the future. Now, you're giving up a lot of draft picks, of course, but you're getting a quarterback, and that's what they need.
And I think one part you're kind of leaving out of this too. I think a big part of it too. If you acquire Herbert, you don't have to worry about Justin Jefferson necessarily asking out anymore. I think if you give him a quarterback like Justin Herbert, who's a similar age, a young guy, very prototypical quarterback size, I think that would be a match made in heaven. I don't care if they win the division. They don't have to win the division. All they have to do is make the playoffs, and if you got Herbert, Justin Jefferson, and the rest of free agency to work with, years in the future, that's great building blocks. And we're not even talking about Jordan Addison. You have Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and Justin Herbert. That might be a better combo than Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And I'm not afraid to say it. I think it could be, and I think it will be next year anyways. So I think it makes a lot of sense. If you want to go McCarthy here at 5, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think the only other option that would make sense is Neighbors. And they just drafted a wide receiver first round last year. And I just, you know me, I just explained. I love Neighbors, and I think that'd be a good fit. But at the same time, it's like going wide receiver back-to-back drafts. And then if Neighbors is not the guy we think he is, imagine going back-to-back receiver and neither hitting. You're fired, dude. You're fired.
Yeah.
The GM's fired. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think it makes sense here to go McCarthy. I think it's a cool trade, man. I think it's cool. And this isn't necessarily a predictive kind of thing for us right now. We're gonna have our mock draft in a couple weeks here, but I do think it's cool, and I think it makes sense.
Yeah. But like any other positions here, like they could go anything really. Like Joe Alt could go here.
It's not a sexy pick though, it's kind of just a need.
Yeah. But like if they want to ensure that Justin Herbert stays around for a long time, you got to get him some help. But like, yeah, I don't think you can risk going receivers back to back here.
Yeah.
So we're going with the silly JJ McCarthy here.
Let's go with a little. Why don't we do a little trade up for the Vikings here, for Herbert? Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Or no, I guess. Okay. I guess
they'd be
JJ would be. Yeah. Yep.
Would be the Chargers. Yeah.
Yep.
So then, with the New York Giants here, we've had 4 quarterbacks go in the top 5. This is a team that could be maybe trying to go quarterback if they really wanted to get off Daniel Jones. But now, are you drafting Bo Nix or Penix here? I don't think so. So what position are they going, P?
I think we both know if he's still on the board, they have to go Neighbors. I
Mhm.
think if he's there at 6, this is kind of the guy you need to get you out of the trenches, get you where you need to go. And I'm not saying that drafting him would automatically make them a playoff team, a divisional winner. Obviously, the Cowboys and Eagles are going to be really good, but it gives you a lot better chance to have kind of the alpha guy, possibly the best receiver in the division. And I know, Sam, that sounds crazy because you have CeeDee Lamb, you have AJ Brown, you have Devontae Smith in your division, but it gives you a chance. Gives you a chance, and I think at this point, number 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks are off the board, so you can't go quarterback. Not especially not when you're paying DJ the money you're paying him. I think he's like the 5th or 6th highest paid quarterback in the league right now. So I think you have to just get a weapon. If you move on from Daniel Jones at some point, that's fine. But it's such a need and it's such a value pick at this point that he fell to you at 6 that I just don't think you can turn him down. So yeah, I think it's Malik Neighbors. I would be very surprised if they went Rome Odunze. And in my evaluation process this last few weeks, last month and a half, I will say I'm not the biggest Rome Odunze fan. I think he's a good player, but I just don't know if he's the type of number 1 alpha guy that's going to be competing with CeeDee Lamb or Devontae Smith or AJ Brown to be the best guy in the division. But I think Malik Neighbors can be that guy. So for that reason, I think he's kind of the obvious pick here, and I would pick him here at 6.
Yeah. Just looking at what the Giants did in free agency, I believe they traded for Brian Burns. They I don't think that. I guess
Good
they didn't
trade
really
for
have
them.
any. Yeah, very good trade.
Hmm.
Not many more notable names, but this was probably one of the most underperforming teams that we were looking at last year. They made it to the playoffs. Won a playoff game. They
Yeah.
finished a top 8 team in the league with Brian Dable as their coach, and then last year they just had a stinker. And yeah, Daniel Jones was hurt. Yeah, Darren Waller was hurt, but you still had Saquon Barkley, who was relatively healthy.
Yeah, now you don't
Uh,
have him anymore.
yeah, you don't have him anymore. But look at their defense. They got Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau,
Their
Deontay
defense is
Banks, who they
good.
drafted. Their defense is good. So they got to go offense here. And, Devin Singletary, that's okay
It's fine.
running back to have. But, who's your number 1? Darius Slayton? Wandale Robinson,
Mid
former
number
Husker?
2. Yeah.
Wandale's just too small to be a 1. And
Yeah.
I like Jalen Hyatt. I had him going to the Giants in the first round last year. I
Yeah.
had him being a first round talent. He ended up going in the third. Um,
But he's also a high. His ceiling is a high number 2.
yeah. So no one's the alpha. Malik Neighbors gets drafted here. He's the guy. He's
Mhm.
number 1. And here's the thing: is you're cool with Slayton being your 2. You're cool with Robinson being your 2. You're cool with Hyatt being your 2. And that's a good receiving core for a quarterback that needs to prove himself. Otherwise, he is gone next year.
Yeah.
And
And
nobody is giving him half the contract that he had.
yeah, and I would also say on top of that, if you whiff on this pick, Nable's gone as well. So I think that if you take Neighbors here and you at least get some more juice on that offense, because obviously, like you said, you're losing Saquon Barkley. That defense is pretty much what you need it to be. I mean, they could use one more guy in the secondary, sure. They could use one more guy on the edge, sure. But you need offensive juice. You need to be able to put up points. And whether DJ's your quarterback now, whether he's your quarterback in 2 years, it doesn't matter because you're going to need to have a receiver plan there at some point. And I just don't think any position is going to move the needle as much as Neighbors will. So I think that makes the most sense here. Not only for Dable, but for the team, for DJ, everybody involved. I don't see them trading out of this pick. I don't see them taking a Dunze. I have them taking Neighbors if he's there at 6.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So we'll scratch him in there. Next is the Tennessee Titans. Again, don't think that you can go with Bo Nix or Michael Penix here.
No.
Tennessee's confusing. They just got Pollard. What did they do in free agency? I don't care
So
about that.
how about I lead off with this?
Go ahead.
You have them as kind of a confusing team. I have them as pretty a cut and dry team. I think that this is one of those teams that are building, but I wouldn't say they're at year zero. I think that when you talk about an NFL team that's on rebuild year zero, I think you need everything. You need everything. And I'm talking about a quarterback. You need receivers. You need a whole defense. You don't even know if your head coach is really the guy yet. Now, obviously, they're new head coach. You have a year 2 rookie quarterback, or not a rookie, but he's going to be a sophomore, second year quarterback. And I think you want to give him the opportunity to show you that he can be the guy. And I'm not saying he is the guy, but you want to give him the chance to show that he is the guy. Now, no matter whether he is the guy or not, I think one thing we can agree on is they need offensive line help and they need receiving help. Now, I think mainly from the tape that I watched, I don't even want to say tape. I want to say the games that I've watched, because I've watched Titans games, the whole game. They need offensive line help badly. Every time I watched them, Levis did not have any time to throw, and no matter if it's the only guy that can really operate with no time is Patrick Mahomes because of his release, because of his mobility, all that. We know how good he is. But if you give him a little bit more time in the pocket, I think he can work with some of the bottom tier receivers in the league because they don't really have much right now. So I think that if you go Joe Alt here, that'd be a good pick. He's probably the best overall offensive tackle. If you want to go Fashanu because you want to have more of a passing attack, then that's cool. I think he's one of the better pass blocking guys in tackles in the draft this year. I don't think I would quite go Fuaga. I think he's a great run blocker. He's a big guy. But I don't think I would go him here. I think it would be one of those things where you want to get one of those offensive tackles that you know is going to be a building block for your pass attack because you want Will Levis to air the ball out. That's kind of what this is, NFL regime is kind of built around is passing. So I think you go Joe Alt here, maybe Fashanu if you really like him. I think he had a pretty good combine. So, if you like him here, you take him here, but otherwise, and then I think I think that would be my 1 and 2, and then my wild card would be a Dunze if you really want to go receiver. I just think you can wait a little bit longer on that, where you have a Joe Alt kind of prospect here, where he's probably going to be really good, so you just take him here.
Yeah, I think you go Joe Alt. I mean, there's not many times that you can get a tackle in the top 10 with the size and speed that a Joe Alt can provide. 6'8", 6'8". This guy's playing football. You'd think he'd be playing basketball.
Right. Almost
He's
6'9". He's so tall.
Almost 6'9".
Yeah.
And like 6'9", 320. Like that's not like a big guy by any means. I mean, he's big as in like offensive lineman, but like it's not enough where he's immobile. I mean, there's J.C. Latham, who's 2.5 inches shorter, but he's 21 pounds heavier. Doesn't move as fast. There's a few other 6'8" guys, but he's like the tallest tackle that's projected to go in the top 100. He has the second. Okay, he's tied for like 4th fastest 40 among offensive tackles. But I just think that this is the type of guy that you would need. You went Skoronski last year, good pick.
Good pick.
You signed Lloyd Cushenberry. I think this is probably your last little touch on the offensive line, and then you should be good to protect Will Levis.
Yeah, or whoever comes in after that.
And you already went and got some weapons. You got Calvin Ridley to go along with Treylon Burks. You got Tony Pollard. Like, your offense is starting to kind of settle in.
Yeah.
And I think Joe Alt is going to be the nice last tackle that you need to kind of get you going and then focus on defense. Now, if they were going to go defense, I do like an edge rusher here,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they want to fix their offense first, considering that they signed Tony Pollard to a 3-year deal. They signed Calvin to a 4-year deal.
Big deal.
I think they want to, because they're still going to have Will Levis for a year after this, so they'll be fine. Like, this is a team that's probably going to be, picks 8 to 13 next year is what I'm expecting. But their offense is probably going to be closer to that top half than the last 5, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and before we go on, because I think we can both agree they're going to go Joe out here. Another reason to go Joe out here, can you go to their combine stats here? Just
Yes.
offensive tackles. Though, here's the thing. Not only did he want to do the 3-cone, which a lot of offensive linemen don't want to do the 3-cone, he did the 3-cone at a 7.31, who was the fastest 3-cone out of all the offensive linemen. Go offensive interior as well. Go offensive
Look at
interior.
real fast. Look at Roma Dunze, 6.88
Right. As a receiver.
as a receiver, and Joe Alt did a 7.31.
And I guess there's not even really much interior offensive lineman that
That's
even
a
have.
receiver.
He has a faster one than Ricky Purcell. Than Cooper Beebe. He he's just so athletic and he's so big as far as his height and stature. I just don't see a lot of scenarios where he's not a good player. I think if you ran a simulation of 100 simulations, he's probably not a good play. Not even, and I'm not even talking about a franchise offensive tackle, which I think he can be. I'm talking about he's not an average starter. He's not a Caleb McGarry, who's an average starter who gets paid $10 million a year. I think in most scenarios, simulations, he would be that kind of good player in 96 out of 100 because he's so big, so athletic. I think he's got a great personality. I like everything about Joe Alt. I think he's a great pick for the Titans. Really have to mess with it.
Yeah. All right. So then we'll put Joe Alt there. We agree.
Yep.
All right. Now you're Atlanta Falcons, same spot that you were in last year, basically.
Last
I
2
think.
years.
Last 2 years.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Growth. But we love to see it.
Oh, Arthur Smith. I love you.
So, you know, you got Bijan last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You signed Kirk Cousins. Okay.
Yep. Got Dre
You have
London the year before that.
decent amount of receivers.
Yep.
Offensive line's pretty well set.
Yeah.
Is this the first defender?
It's got to be, right? Because, this is my peanut butter and jelly. So let me just get into it real quick. So we have enough offensive talent to help us be good. We got Darnell Mooney in the offseason. We drafted Kyle Pitts the year before last year. We got Bijan Robinson. We signed Kirk Cousins to basically a 2-year 50. Let's just call it what it is. We got Kyle Pitts, who can still be really good. Last year he was coming off an injury. I think this year he can be much better, especially when you don't have Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder throwing in the ball. So, and I didn't even mention Tyler Algier, who can be a number one on some teams in the league here. So we have enough offensive help to be fine. And real briefly, Chris Lindstrom, all pro kind of guard. You got Caleb McGarry, who's good. Jake Matthews, who's a veteran in this league. Matthew Bergeron, who we took in the second round, who had a good rookie year. So our offensive line is fine. Now, if any Falcons fans are listening to this, you know that we need edge help badly because our secondary, I won't say it's top 5. It might not even be top 10. But it's a damn good secondary. You have Jesse Bates III, who's an all-pro type of player. You have AJ Terrell, who's a really good player. Now, the other number 2s on the secondaries there, CB2, safety 2, suspect, right? So maybe you get a guy there. But when you talk about the defensive line, you got one guy there who, might I note, is coming off a season-ending ACL injury in Grady Jarrett. So, and I love Grady Jarrett, but he's getting a little older. His contract's a little bit heavier. We drafted Arnold Ebiketie a couple years ago in the second round. All right player, more of a rotation kind of guy. And so with Raheem Morris coming in here being a defensive head coach, you got to think he's going edge. He wants to get his guy to, kind of put the staples on his defense. And I think that comes down to two positions. That's edge and that's corner. And then it comes down to who do you like more? Dallas Turner or Liatu Latu or Jared Verse, maybe. But I kind of explained this to Sam off air a little bit. I think that Jared Verse has a slightly lower ceiling than the other guys. He has a good floor. I think he would come in as kind of an 8-9 sack kind of guy. He could be that kind of guy. But I do think that Latu has very technical skills. He treats the position like an art. Obviously, with his injury stuff a couple years ago, and him, thinking that he would be medically retired, and then him being able to come back, I think that was one of the things that kind of made his passion of the position stronger. Um, and so he doesn't take any downs for granted. I think he knows at any time he could be not playing the position, so he really takes it as an art. Whereas I think Dallas Turner, athletic freak. I think he's the type of guy where you want him to come in, and if you really believe that you can mold this guy into being the type of Brian Burns, many of the great edge rushers that are in the league right now. If you think he's going to be that kind of guy, you take him. If you think you just want a guy that knows how to play the position, may not have as many athletic traits, but is going to be really good at the position, take Latu. And I like the corners in this class, but I think we just need edge help so much. And so I think it's going to be Dallas Turner, but I, as a Falcons fan, want Latu because I think he's going to come in here and be really good right off the bat, but also give you a good ceiling to where you can keep building. And I think I see him as a little bit higher of an outcome on average than Dallas Turner. But in 100 simulations, Dallas Turner in 49 of those simulations could become one of the top 5 edge rushers in the NFL.
Yeah. So I kind of have to disagree. And you've put in a lot of thought into this because I mean this is your team. But I think that Dallas Turner and Latu are fairly comparable, and you would say that, right? Fairly,
It depends on what context you're talking about.
just as like kind of like prospects.
As like where they're gonna go in the draft. That's tough, man, because
They're close, right?
they're on my board. They're close, but I don't know what the NFL scouts are thinking. But I would say Dallas Turner is probably a little higher.
And I think we know why.
Yes, we
Because
know why.
Alabama guys
I
don't
mean, he
miss.
ran a 4.46. I mean, this guy's 250 pounds at 6'3", running a 4.46 as an edge rusher. I mean,
Yeah.
as a 40 vertical and a 127-inch broad jump. I mean, he's a freak, dude. He's a freak.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna name some notable guys from Alabama's defense that have been drafted, in some good picks.
Okay,
Brian Branch, who was a Week 1 starter for the Detroit Lions,
good player.
that was a top 14 this year,
Yep.
was pick 45. Obviously, Will Anderson Jr. was picked number 3
Yeah,
with the Texans, made a huge impact. Let's see, in 2022, really no notable ones. 21, they had Patrick Surtain, pick number
great
9.
corner.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Good thing we're talking about defense. Otherwise, I'd bring up Alex Leatherwood. Oh.
You bring
Here's
up Henry Ruggs. My bad.
here's 2 that were taken in the second round, but both turned out pretty good. Xavier McKinney for the New York
Good
Giants,
safety.
and Trayvon Diggs.
Another good DB. Yeah.
And you could keep going down the line. Like there's
It's a lot
Quinnen
of DBs
Williams,
though, man. It's a lot of
a lot of
DBs.
DBs. But I mean, I could go through and we could look at the fifth. It's 6 rounders. I mean, there's on average. I mean, Alabama has about like 8 or 9 draft picks every single year.
Yeah,
If you're a senior, you played, you're probably getting drafted.
yeah,
But like, there's a lot of guys. Henry to went to the Texans and
yeah.
was a linebacker. Byron Young went to the Raiders. He's a D tackle. Jordan Battle played for the Bengals this year as a safety, or helped replace Jesse Bates. So Alabama guys don't miss, especially when they are high up. Like look at Will Anderson. This guy was paired up next to Will on the opposite side of Will Anderson, and this was a team. Those two guys led that team to a national championship appearance. Now they lost to Georgia, who was a great Georgia team, of course. But I just think that the Alabama prestige is what's going to edge Turner over Latu.
No pun intended.
But right, but I do think that Latu has a very good bag.
Yeah.
So either one, I think, is going to help the Falcons. But if I were going to be a GM, probably go with the Bama guy.
So let me ask you this at all. I don't know if it really matters to you that much. So where I want to kind of phrase this as a question, and I'll try to keep it quick because I don't want to run this podcast too long. Where do you think that Latu ended up in his draft class, or in his high school ranking as a prospect? Or what number or where rank? Where do you think he ranked at?
First out of high school,
Yeah.
4th.
So he was 5th. Okay. Pretty good. Pretty good. 95
Yeah,
overall, right? 95.
that's not bad.
Not pretty good player. Where do you think Dallas Turner ended as a prospect in the country, and what do you think his overall was?
I'm gonna say he was like 11th, and he was a 92.
He was the number 1 edge in the country,
Okay,
and he was 99. One of the highest defensive prospects, I think, in the last 10 years. He's got the pedigree, man.
and he's lived up to the hype.
And he has. Yeah, he's a top 10 pick. Um, So yeah, man. I mean, I think you have to go Dallas Turner here. I don't think you can pass up on the upside. I don't think you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the physicals, that speed, and
He
just
showed
agility.
out. He showed out in the combine. And we knew he was gonna do it, but he actually did it though.
Yeah. All right, so then we'll go with Mr. Turner at pick 8. So we got Chicago's second pick now, pick number 9. We just talked about them getting Caleb Williams. They don't really need to get someone on offense, right? Do they go defense?
Based on I might throw you kind of a curveball here. I'm not sure where your head is at with the Bears' second pick. I do like Adunze there, but I feel like they have enough guys where, you have Keenan Allen there. You gave a pick for him. You have DJ Moore there still. And you got a late pick for Justin Fields. I feel like you got to continue to build this defense out because defense is one of those positions, or I guess, I don't want to say positions because obviously it's a bigger thing than that. But it's one of those sides of the ball, I guess I should say, where you tend to have guys rotate very often on teams. And I think before you know it, you can, have your edge get hurt. You can have a DB ask out or potentially leave. I know they just signed the corner Jalen Johnson to a long-term extension. Love that for the Bears. But I think you can never go without more pass rushers. So I think they could go with another pass rusher here, or I think they could go DB. If they went Quinion Mitchell here, would love the pick. If they went Latu here, I would love the pick. So it's it's for the context of the podcast, I think it's really up to you, Sam. I think they should go defense. I like defense here for them. I think they have their offense kind of built out. But also, if you wanted to go Fashanu, I wouldn't hate it. I do think going him and then going last year
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright, I don't love that. So I think I'd go defense, but I wouldn't hate it. I think you can kick one of those guys to the inside. Or maybe they could play both outside. I feel like they have another guy there that I'm forgetting about, um, but yeah, I think they should go defense ultimately and get their potential first or second favorite edge, or get their first favorite corner.
Yeah. So, I was thinking that this is a team that should go with Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold or maybe even Kool-Aid, one of those corners to be the first corner taken off the board here. But they re-signed Jalen Johnson and they signed Kevin Byard. I don't think they need to go secondary. So if they go somewhere, I think it's got to be edge. So, this is probably an opportunity where, if the scenario plays out like it does and Atlanta comes up and they have to pick between Latu and Turner, the Bears are like, we'll go with whoever they don't pick.
Yeah.
So I think that they go Latu here. You have Latu on one side and Montez Sweat on the other.
Montez Sweat. I forgot about him, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and because they got TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds
Yeah.
as linebackers, I think that would basically be set. And, they don't have a pick until I think pick 75 or something like that after. So they're going to have a while until another pick. But at least they get, number two. Obviously, they get the number one quarterback and the number two edge rusher. Can't really ask for much more.
Yeah, and I think not only that, but if you're talking about in terms of the division, I think that would give them at that point probably the second best defense in the division, because I think it'd be better than the Vikings. I think we can agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably be better than the Packers, although we have to kind of see how their draft goes as well. It's debatable.
Mm-hmm.
They have a pretty good defense over there. And then I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I could put them over the Lions defense. But I think they could perform up to expectations and possibly be just as good. If they have Sweat and Latu and Jalen Johnson, those other guys that you talked about, the linebackers, I think they have a really good built-out defense. And then you also have your receivers, and you have Caleb Williams now. And I think, man, the Panthers trade's looking really good now. I think it's looking really good. Um, so yeah, man. I mean, I like it a lot. I like Latu there. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. So then that brings up the New York Jets, last team, pick number 10. Aaron Rodgers is coming back, at least as that we know of. They still have, all those options for him. Defense is pretty good. Defense is pretty set.
Yeah.
So are they going to get a target here for him?
I think it's two guys here. And I have my eyes, if I'm the GM of the Jets or Saleh, I have my eyes set on Fashanu. Because number one, he's, in my opinion, the best pass blocker in the draft. And you know that whether you have Aaron Rodgers or you have whoever else, you are going to want to pass the ball. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, you're going to want to pass the ball 60-40. So I like him there. I really like that. And potentially he could be ultimately, I don't know if he will be because we talked about Joel earlier, he could be the best pass blocker or even just the best offensive lineman in the draft in total. And you take him at 10, that's a great value pick. Now, number two, if you draft Rome Odunze, who would be my second guy, I really like that as well because you have a great receiving core there after that. You pretty much have your 1 and 2 set who depending on the season could be a 1 and 1. You could have a Garrett Wilson, Rome Odunze fighting for that 1 and 1. And if you have two potential alpha receivers, makes it really hard to not have a really good offensive season. I think we kind of look at like what the Bengals did in their first season. They went to the Super Bowl. You look at the Eagles, they went to the Super Bowl. Both have potential number ones. So I think when you have that kind of dynamic versatility where you can't double a guy, I think it makes it really hard for defenses to be able to contain two guys there. So I like either pick. I would probably lean Fashanu because I think it's a little bit safer of a bet because whether you get Aaron Rodgers healthy for a season or two, or you get the next guy, the next iteration of the guy, he's going to have a guy he can count on to be there. And I think he's a little bit safer of a bet than whereas you never really know how receivers are going to turn out. I have faith that Rome Odunze is going to be good, better than Quentin Johnson for sure. Um, so I wouldn't mind going him here, but I just think it's a little bit less safe than a guy like Fashanu.
So I like the two guys that you brought up, and I feel like those are probably the two guys that they're going to be debating between. But just looking at the team or the players that they added Hassan Reddick. They still got C.J. Mosley. They still got Quincy Williams. They got Sauce Gardner. So that defense is set.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't need to touch that. They still got Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, who would potentially be their fourth wide receiver if they draft Rome Odunze. But they also got Mike Williams. Do got to keep that in mind too. But something that I think, they drafted Joe Tipman, I think, last year, and they got Vera Tucker,
Yeah.
and they also signed Tyrone Smith.
Yeah, but I think we can both agree those guys are 1-year band-aids, man,
Maybe
At least Smith is.
Tyrone Smith was one of the top tackles in the league.
He is.
So,
But how old is how old is he? He's
Tyrone
36, 37. I mean, and not even that, but he would be a great mentor for a guy like Fashanu. Great mentor.
Yeah,
awesome.
He's 33 years old. But
Okay.
I do want to throw in a name that might, I don't think you're going to like it. I'm a big fan of this guy, and, a team that would really like to take him, but wouldn't have taken him earlier was the Los Angeles Chargers, and that's Brock Bowers.
Oh.
I think Brock Bowers, he's easily, in my opinion, the best tight end in this draft. Let's see.
Easy.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But, he's on a team where in the last 3 seasons, they have lost only 2 games and won 2 national championships. And, he might not have been the best guy on that offense, but he was, consistently a really good guy.
I mean, if they don't have Marvin Harrison, he would, let's be honest. I mean, Brock Bowers would be the best player on most teams in college football.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that this could be a good opportunity for the Jets to get another target because honestly, is it a little overkill if you do get Rome Odunze if you have Wilson, Williams, Odunze, and Lazard? Or would it help if you had Wilson, Williams, Lazard, and then Bowers playing a different position?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it at all. The one thing I will say is that I don't think it's quite overkill because I think we know Mike Williams for next season's probably not going to be healthy the whole season. He'd be a good mentor. Lazard is a good number 3. He's a good number 3. But I don't think he's a number 2. So I don't know if it would quite be overkill. But I don't hate the Brock Bowers draft here. I think it'd be really good. And I think honestly, saying that he's just a tight end is kind of underplaying his ability because I think he can do a lot more than be that. I think he kind of like Kyle Pitts, kind of like Darren Waller. He can be a guy that if you have a linebacker matched up on him, he's gonna burn that guy, especially downfield. So yeah, I mean it's going to be a lot easier for him to be able to get off and be an impact player. So I like it there. More bust potential, him or a Dunze.
It's hard to say,
It's hard to say.
just because I mean, I feel like the floor is a lot lower with Bowers, just because your expectations aren't super high. Like,
Yeah,
if you're drafting a wide receiver top 10, your expectations are pretty high. Drafting
higher
a
than
tight
Garrett
end top
Wilson
10,
maybe.
potentially.
Yeah.
And but Brock Bowers, because he's not just coming in to catch passes. I mean, that's a big reason why I feel like the Falcons went with Pitts a few years ago, because he's
Hmm.
like, that size is amazing and that's a great target to throw
Blocker.
to.
Yeah,
But Brock Bowers, if you see him when they are doing some power run, he is a lead blocker, and you
he
don't see
is.
that with a lot of tight ends. And I feel like keeping Brees Hall, if Brees Hall is 1,000-yard rusher next year, and they draft Brock Bowers, I would have been like, yeah, duh.
Hmm.
But if they don't draft Brock Bowers and Brees Hall only runs for like 800 yards and is healthy, I I could see it. But Brock just does so much more for you. Whereas obviously Odunze, you're not gonna be like, okay, Odunze, go be a lead blocker as a wide receiver. No, it's gonna be, you're gonna burn this team, or you're gonna burn this defense. All right, you gotta do that. So I feel like Brock Bowers, you're asking him to do more because he can do more.
Hmm.
Odunze, you're asking him to do one thing, and that's be a wide receiver.
I think that's a really good analysis. Honestly, I can't really deny that. So last thing we'll end on here is you like Brock Bowers over Fashanu?
I think that their offensive line is good enough where they need to get a weapon that will help. Now, I kind of countering what I just said, because if I was going with that logic, I would say let's go with Dunze.
Hmm.
But I do think that their line got better, and they have at least 3 out of 5 guys where you can rely on, and they're not all three the center and 2 guys on the same side. They got left tackle, center, right guard that you can rely on as some
Okay.
good offensive linemen. So that's why I think Brock Bowers, and also you can have Brock Bowers do some pass blocking
Yeah, which is
to really
pretty
help out.
invaluable. Yeah, when you talk about a guy that his main skill is making plays.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I do like Brock Bowers at 10.
Yeah, I think it's a good analysis. I like it.
All right. All right. So then I guess just to recap, some players that we're kind of thinking, or what we were thinking, is obviously Caleb Williams going 1 with the Bears. Commanders going quarterback. We ended up saying Drake May there. Patriots going quarterback, but maybe sneaking Marvin Harrison. But they're going Jane Daniels. Marvin Harrison going to the Cardinals, but maybe going Malik Neighbors. The Chargers doing the insane and trading Justin Herbert for 3 future first round picks and a little bit more, including 2 from this year, and drafting Mr. JJ McCarthy out of Michigan to pair up with Jim Harbaugh again. The Giants going with Malik Neighbors just because he's fallen so far. Joe Alt going with the Titans, although we could see Fashanu going there as well. Dallas Turner or Fatu with the Falcons,
Latu.
but we ended. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Latu. Yep. Um, and we decided to go Turner, and then the Bears said, "Okay, well, we'll just take the other guy." So Latu going there, since edge rush is probably their last needed position,
Hmm.
and then any offensive or any best available of wide receiver or tackle, but probably Brock Bowers with the Jets. So, all right, P. So that was our top 10 preview. We'll have our mock draft here in a little over 2 weeks,
Two
I
weeks.
think.
Yep. Hmm.
So, I think that's pretty well set in stone. JJ McCarthy, little bit of a reach. It's kind of some fun little like
Maybe we don't know yet. We don't know.
Yeah. See, and here's the thing: is like people can call me an idiot for the idea, and I'm like, hey, I didn't say I believed it,
Yeah, it's just an idea, you know.
or maybe I'm just a genius.
Maybe you're a genie. You're looking in your silver ball.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see if our minds change in the next 2 weeks with our group mock draft that we'll do with Sean. But yeah, we'll see how this whole thing shapes up. As you see on the ticker here on the YouTube video, 19 days, 2 hours, 27 minutes, and approximately 40 seconds until the draft. So it's going to be a good time. So uh, once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast.